What happens when a black teenager gets humiliated in front of the elite just for bringing homemade pies? They had no idea the pendant on his chest was about to turn their entire world upside down. Cade Brown never set out to become anyone's headline, let alone a viral scandal in a press shirt. He didn't come with a chip on his shoulder or a plan to stick it to the man. No revenge fantasy, no self-righteous speech tucked in his pocket. What he carried instead was a modest box of fresh peach hand pies, the kind that steam when you break them open, and a sense of decency that his mama stitched into him like lining in a coat. She taught him that gratitude is something you carry with dignity, not flaunted, not begged for, just offered, honest and whole. That's what brought him to the gate of the Montgomery estate, a place so large it had streetlights on the driveway. He stood in front of the iron and gold monstrosity like a character who had wandered off the set of the wrong movie. He wasn't here to prove anything. He wasn't here to claim some long-lost birthright. He was here to say thank you. Simple as that. 17. Black. Dressed in his Sunday best. A white button-up and a pair of ironed navy slacks that still carried the crease from the Goodwill rack. No gold watch, no branded loafers, just him and the necklace. The only piece of jewelry he ever wore. A small, tear-shaped gold pendant with a spiral engraving. His mama gave it to him when he turned 13. It meant something once, she told him, and maybe one day it will again. So there he stood, holding a wax-sealed invitation embossed with the Montgomery crest, the kind of invitation that usually doesn't end up in mailboxes in East Harlem. The event? A closed-door legacy gathering, a family-only reunion for the chosen heirs of one of the richest dynasties on the East Coast. Think of it like a corporate shareholder meeting, but with more Chardonnay, less regulation. He crossed the pristine marble courtyard like it was a minefield. People watched, and not discreetly. The house staff didn't glare. No, they didn't dare. But they glanced at him like they were bracing for someone else to handle it. Security, maybe? Or management. Because when a young black man walks confidently into a place he's not supposed to be, every nerve in a white-gloved room tightens like a belt at a baptism. He entered the ballroom. The sound died. It didn't fade. It stopped. The laughter cut out. Champagne flutes froze midair. Every eye, polished, powerful, privileged, snapped to attention. They scanned him the way TSA scans a duffel bag from Detroit. Not for what he brought, but for what threat he might be. No Rolex, no cufflinks, just peach pies and black skin. A woman in her 50s, wrapped in an outfit that probably cost more than Cade's tuition, approached him with the smile of someone who had never, not once in her life, been corrected in public. "Excuse me," she said sweetly, "are you lost?" Cade didn't flinch. He'd been rehearsing this part all morning. He pulled the invitation from his pocket like it was scripture. "I was invited," he said. "My name's Cade Brown." Her hand took the envelope like it was contagious. Her eyes scanned it, and her smile did what fake smiles do when hit with real confusion. It collapsed. "Mr. Brown," she repeated, blinking. "I see. And what brings you here exactly?" Cade held up the box. "I wanted to thank Mr. Montgomery. He helped my mother years ago. I made these. Thought it might mean something." It smelled like cinnamon and effort, like love baked into every fold of crust, the kind of gift no trust fund kid has ever given or received. And then came the laugh. Not from her, not yet. It came from a tall boy with bleached blonde ambition and a face like a frat pledge. "Oh, that's precious," he chuckled. "Did someone confuse the catering schedule?" Another voice chimed in. This one female, high-pitched and perfectly manicured. "Is this a bake sale, or are we doing performance charity now?" Laughter spread like a gas leak, slow at first, then catching fire. Cade stood there holding the box like a fool. He had walked in carrying gratitude and walked right into mockery, not for who he was, but for daring to be seen. And that's when the room shifted, because through the side entrance walked the man himself, Richard Montgomery, tall, gray, dressed in a suit that looked tailored by time itself. The room didn't fall silent because he asked. It went quiet because power doesn't yell when it knows it can whisper. "What's going on here?" he asked. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made interns cry in bathrooms. Cade didn't speak. He was too stunned. But the woman, the one with the frozen smile, jumped in like someone saving a brand's reputation. Some kind of mistake, she said quickly. An administrative error. This young man received an invitation, but clearly there's been a mix-up. Richard's eyes found Cade. Not his face, not his shoes, his necklace. And he stopped breathing. The man who built cities, who bulldozed competitors in boardrooms without blinking, froze. That necklace, the gold pendant, the spiral. It hit him like a ghost whispering in the ear. "Where did you get that?" he asked, the words breaking over his tongue like ice cracking under weight. "It was my mom's," Cade said quietly. "She told me someone gave it to her, said it mattered." "What was her name?" "Catherine Brown." The air turned leaden. Somewhere, someone sipped champagne. Not because they were thirsty, but because they needed to do something with their hands. Montgomery turned on his heel and left. No words, no commands, just a look at security that said, "Don't touch him." The room buzzed like a broken power line. Cade stood alone in the silence, surrounded by faces that had only one expression, fear masked as disgust. He walked to the edge of the room and found a bench near the garden, sat down and stared at the pies. Still warm, still good, just out of place. Some guests whispered, some took videos, but one came forward, a boy in glasses, maybe 20. Quiet confidence. "I'm Henry," he said. "I don't know what's going on here, but that took guts, man. Real ones. Not like the plastic ones they hand out at these parties." Cade shook his hand. It was the first time that night someone touched him without suspicion. And in that moment, with nothing but his name, his hands, and his mama's necklace, Cade decided something. He wasn't leaving. He had walked into this story by accident. But now he had a place in it, whether they liked it or not. What happened next changed everything. Stick around. What comes after this is the explosion, and you won't want to miss how truth becomes a spark. Morning didn't exactly arrive at the Montgomery estate. It barged in like the IRS with a search warrant. The mansion, typically waking to the gentle notes of a baby grand piano and the flaky scent of truffle butter croissants, instead stirred under the weight of something far more pungent. Fear. The kind of fear that smelled like stale cigars, bitter coffee, and the sour sweat of rich folks realizing the house of cards they built might be tipping. Richard Montgomery hadn't slept, not even dozed. He sat in his mahogany throne of a chair in the library, a chair that probably cost more than a brownstone in Harlem, gripping a photograph so tightly the corners had curled. In it, she smiled. Catherine, young, radiant, the kind of woman the world underestimated and then paid for it. She wore the pendant, the one now hanging around Cade's neck like a ticking clock from the past. He remembered her. Not the way nostalgia paints memories and pastelize. No, he remembered the truth. Their meetings, quick, hidden, tender, foolish. And when his family found out, the way they erased her was surgical, efficient, brutal. The kind of erasure that only old money can afford. But she hadn't vanished. She'd just walked away. And now somehow she had returned, through a teenage boy with fire in his eyes and pie in his hands. Outside the library door, the silence was restless. Claire, his niece and unofficial enforcer of all things Montgomery image, stood with her jaw locked so tight it could slice granite. Beside her, two lawyers hovered like vultures in tailored suits, clutching binders as if they were shields against scandal. "If you acknowledge him," Claire began, her voice polished but pulsing with panic, "we lose everything. The advisory board, the trust shares, the family voting block." "That's your problem," Richard snapped, not looking up. "Not his." "You don't even know if he's your son," Claire hissed. "This could be a scam, a long con. We haven't even ordered a DNA test yet." Finally, Richard raised his head. His eyes weren't red. They were raw, like the truth had clawed its way to the surface. "I do know," he said, "because I know what guilt feels like after 30 years. And there it was, the line in the sand, not shouted, not sobbed, just laid bare. He'd already lost, because even if it wasn't true, he wanted it to be. Downstairs, Cade sat in the mansion's sunroom, which to him felt less like a cozy retreat and more like an aquarium for the rich. The coffee in his cup was bitter, not because it was burnt, but because it tasted like he had no business drinking it in a place like this. Henry sat across from him, still visibly reeling from the bomb that had detonated the night before. "They are furious," he said. Cade smirked. "Let them boil. I didn't come for inheritance. I came with gratitude. But if all they see is threat, that's their lens, not mine." Henry nodded, then leaned in. "But what if it's real? What if you are Richard Montgomery's son? Do you get what that means?" Cade looked out the window. Beyond the glass, the lawn rolled like velvet, fountains bubbled in rhythm, and the estate's turrets stabbed the sky like ivory towers. He knew exactly where he was, and who wasn't meant to be here. "I know what it means," he said, "but I'm not changing who I am just to play by their rules." Later that day, Cade was summoned upstairs. He didn't flinch. No tie, no speech rehearsed, just his heartbeat and his mother's voice in his memory, reminding him that truth doesn't beg. He entered the room like someone walking into crossfire. Claire was already there, flanked by two other relatives who wore the kind of smiles you give someone you think might try to steal your house keys. Richard stood by the window, back straight, like a man about to confess something to a priest or to a mirror. "Cade," he said, "take a seat." "I'll stand," Cade replied. "Feels more honest, especially since I'm not sure if I'm family or a suspect." The room went quiet. You could hear the tension stretching, thin as glass. Claire cleared her throat. "We'd like to proceed legally. A paternity test?" "Fine by me," Cade cut in. "You want blood? Take it. Just know it carries more than genes. It carries street grit, broken systems, and a mother who died wishing I'd one day know where I came from." Richard's eyes dropped. He couldn't look at the boy, not because of doubt, but because of recognition. Cade didn't just remind him of Catherine. He was her voice, reincarnated and amplified. "I'm not asking for money," Cade continued. "I'm not asking for your house, your name, or your respect. I came here with a box of pies, that's it. But if truth makes you shake this much, maybe it ain't me you're afraid of." "That's enough," Richard barked. "The test will happen. But until then, you stay. As family." Cade tilted his head. "The same family that laughed at me last night? This ought to be fun." 2 days later, the media vultures circled. Heir apparent, billionaire faces claims of secret son, gold pendant, peach pie, and a legacy on the line. Cade's face was on blogs. Paparazzi camped outside the gates like it was a royal wedding. He couldn't even open his window without seeing flashes. And still, he stayed. He called his Aunt Esther back in Harlem. She answered on the first ring. "How you holding up, sugar?" "I'm a character in some wild TV show," he said. "The kind with rich people, fake smiles, and real knives." "Well," she chuckled, "don't forget, you got something they never will." "What's that?" "Roots." That evening, Claire hosted what she called a healing dinner. Translated, damage control. Everyone knew it. White wine flowed like strategy. Guests smiled like sharks. Cade walked in wearing the same black shirt and shoes he'd arrived in, because he wasn't about to play dress-up for folks still whispering about his DNA behind napkins. A voice from the table, smug, unmistakably entitled, rang out, "Enjoy your meal, Mr. Brown? Or is it Montgomery now?" Cade smiled. "Brown, because that name owes me nothing." Richard, sitting at the head of the table, looked at him, and for the first time smiled back. Not like a man of status, like a man who remembered who he used to be. And in that flicker of shared truth, Cade saw something that hadn't been there before. He didn't just see a billionaire, he saw a father. This is the turning point. Everything you've waited for is about to snap into place. Stick around. In the next chapter, Cade steps into his power, and it shakes the ground. Cade stood alone in the quiet of a mansion that still didn't feel like home. The room around him was dressed in silent arrogance. Cherrywood panels so polished they gleamed like secrets. Velvet drapes that muffled the sound of guilt, and bookshelves lined with untouched classics that had never been read, only displayed like status trophies. Nothing in that space belonged to him. But the pendant lying warm against his chest, that was his. That had always been his. The morning sun hadn't even fully settled into the garden when the lawyers arrived with their stack of sealed envelopes and grave expressions. But what shook the air wasn't the rustle of papers or even the soft gasp that left Claire's mouth. It was the verdict written in the cold language of science. Paternal match, 99.98% certainty. Claire went pale. One of the junior attorneys dropped his pen. And in that split second, in a room where millions had been negotiated over brunch, truth made the walls tremble. Richard took the paper. His hands, though aged, were steady, but he didn't look up. His eyes clung to the document like it might change if he stared long enough. So, it's true, he whispered, as though admitting it would undo decades. No, Cade replied, voice steady, eyes sharp. It's always been true. Now it just has a file number so y'all can believe it. Silence cracked through the room like a slow-moving earthquake. And then came the noise. Not from Cade, but from the ones who had the most to lose. This is impossible, Thomas snapped, that same smirk now cracking under pressure. It's staged, a setup. You cooked this up to claim a piece of what's ours. Cade didn't blink. Easy there, Netflix, he said. I'm not here for the drama. I'm the chapter your family tried to delete. Richard finally lifted his gaze, and what showed in his eyes was heavier than shock. It was something rarer, regret, recognition, and the hollow ache of a man who spent decades running from a truth he now had to embrace. He stays, Richard said, and the Montgomery Trust, moving forward, is under joint leadership. Cade is my son. End of discussion. Claire's voice rose like a warning siren. You would risk everything for him? For some street kid with no pedigree? I'm not destroying this family, Richard said, slow and cold. I'm finally giving it a soul. By noon, the official press release hit every major outlet from Wall Street to West Coast morning shows. Previously unacknowledged heir confirmed. Cade Brown recognized as biological son of Richard Montgomery. To the public, it was juicy. To the investors, it was genius. Stock prices jumped. People called it a bold generational pivot. Commentators praised Montgomery for embracing diversity. But Cade got on the subway. Same suit, same pendant, different gravity in his step. He walked back into the bakery where he'd once poured his time, where cinnamon and sugar were more plentiful than recognition. Behind the counter, Aunt Esther stood arms crossed, expression unreadable. She'd seen it on the news, of course. You couldn't not see it. Well, she said, raising an eyebrow, look what the cat dragged back. Or should I say, Mr. Legacy? Long as you still make those sweet rolls, I'll take coffee in a paper cup, Cade replied, smiling. You plan on pouring gold flakes in the lattes now? Or just gonna rename the block after yourself? Cade laughed, but his tone shifted. I want to build a foundation, not just in name, one for kids like me, ones the world skips over, not for lack of talent, just 'cause of where they were born, or what they look like. Esther looked at him for a long beat, then nodded slowly. That's your mama talking. She'd be proud. When Cade returned to the Montgomery estate, it wasn't with the hesitant steps of a visitor. He walked the halls with the quiet poise of someone who no longer needed permission to be there. Not a threat, not a charity case, but not furniture either. Claire never looked at him directly. She passed him in corridors like he was made of fog. But her eyes, and when they did land on him, held something different now. Not hatred, fear, the kind you feel when you realize the wrong kind of person not only survived, but showed up with receipts. Henry, meanwhile, had Cade's back from the start. Together they began drafting plans. Real reform, not just glossy reports. Scholarships for underserved communities, transparency in funding, mental health initiatives, and something even more revolutionary, open-door applications, regardless of zip code. We're making a revolution, Henry said one night. No, Cade corrected. We're taking back what was stolen, but we're doing it with paperwork instead of pitchforks. When the night of the annual Montgomery Gala came, a glittering event televised, dissected, and adored by those who never skipped hors d'oeuvres, Cade stepped onto the stage in a soft gray suit. The pendant was visible, not tucked in, not hidden, visible. Because truth, when earned, doesn't whisper. Good evening, he began. My name is Cade Brown. I'm a Montgomery by blood, but not by calendar. I didn't grow up with gates or drivers. My mama didn't know prep schools or galas. But she taught me how to love hard, how to stand up, and how to carry my name like armor. He paused. The crowd was still. Cameras zoomed. I came here with a pie and a thank you. I got jokes, stares, and suspicion in return. That's okay. I don't blame anyone for being surprised by the truth. It's not your shock I'm worried about. It's the silence after. He looked across the sea of faces. Legacy names, polished faces. I'm here because someone like Catherine Brown decided not to disappear, and because a pendant around my neck pointed me to a door that was never meant to open. He lifted the chain. This isn't a decoration. It's a receipt, a record, a promise. Cheers didn't erupt instantly. They grew, steady, rising, real, from the people who saw more than a headline, who saw the full circle, who heard not entitlement, but honesty. Backstage, Richard approached Cade with a softness that felt earned, not automatic. I'm proud of you, he said. Cade didn't blink. Start with that, but don't stop there. Do something with that pride. I want you to take over the foundation, all of it, not as a figurehead, as a leader. Cade nodded. Then lead with conscience, not just cash. That's the legacy that matters. He left the gala early. Applause was fine, but it wasn't oxygen. As he stepped through the marble archway, he saw her. The same woman from the first night. The one who'd asked, "Are you lost?" She stood near the rose hedge now, face uncertain. You wanted to say something? He asked. Her lips parted, then paused. You surprised me, he smiled. Truth usually does, especially when you've been trying to bury it. He adjusted the pendant, turned and walked away. Not to run, not to prove anything, just to live. Because when truth finds its voice, even a pendant can become a hammer. This is not the end. This is the echo. The one that reminds every silent hallway and velvet-draped room, truth waits. And when it arrives, it rings, loud, clear, and unforgettable.